Hey guys, Andrew Dowling here, Mitch Kurtz, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast. Make sure to hit like and subscribe to stay up to date with all that we have coming. All things AltMed? Yeah, that too. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the AltMed podcast. Your host Andrew Dowling here, with me as always my co-host Mitch Kurtz. How you doing, Mitch?
Yeah,
If you do like what we're doing, and we've had a few people tell us that, just a few, please remember to hit like and subscribe on all our videos, and you'll get access to all the latest podcasts. Well, we're taking a bit of a left turn today and hitting a topic that we haven't touched at all so far on AltMed, but we're pretty excited about it. We're going to be talking about cacao, but I do not want to take anything away from the story. So I'm just going to introduce our guest today. He is the founder of Sacred Taste, and it is none other than Mr. Dan Koch. Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. And funny, we were just talking before the show that we may have actually crossed paths at some point at an Above and Beyond show 10 years ago. But anyway, we're not here to talk about trance, but it might actually intersect well in a secondary sense to what we are here to talk about, which is cacao. So how did you get into cacao? What is it about cacao that lured you in?
Well, funnily enough, I actually started my cacao journey through the trance music and trance industry. From 2009 to 2013, I was actually a professional trance DJ. I was basically playing trance music in Melbourne, and I was warming up for, some of the top 100 DJs in the world. So any top 100 DJ in the world, if they were playing trance and they came to Melbourne, pretty much I was the one that was warming up for them. And
Amazing.
it was a really beautiful career, like a lot of fun, like a lot of joy, but also a very toxic lifestyle. So a lot of substances, alcohol and whatnot. And then pretty much I left at the height of my career. Like the height of my career, I actually got to warm up for Above and Beyond at High Sense
Amazing.
Arena, sold out shows, 7,500 people. And yeah, basically left at the height of my career after that event, and realized that I wanted to pursue a more holistic lifestyle. And so basically came down that mountain, was very satisfied with my career efforts, and then basically packed everything into a van and I moved to Bondi. And that's where I did 3 years sobriety, and no substances, no alcohol, all organic food. And I used no coffee even. I used cacao as my substitute. So I use cacao as my substitute for coffee, for alcohol, and for things that would naturally make me high. And so I had another business while I was there in Bondi called Grow Space, where I taught people how to grow their own food using less space and minimal effort. And through that and working with cacao every day, it really did open my heart and, align me to my path and to my purpose. And then I think it was probably a year into me being in Bondi, maybe like 9 months. One of my friends who I made there, he actually comes out and he's like, "Oh man, I just Googled you. It turns out you're some big superstar DJ. Like, how come you didn't tell me this?" And I said, "No, look, I'm done with that career. I don't want to DJ anymore." And he basically said, "Look, do you want to throw a party?" And I'm like, "Nah, man, like I don't want to be around substances, no alcohol." He's like, "Look, let's do it as a cacao party." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And then we basically started a cacao party, and that's how, Sacred was born, and how we came onto this path. So, and now we're actually throwing parties and I'm still playing trance music and using cacao as the substitute. And we're creating a natural high that people don't have to come down from.
That
Very
is,
interesting.
yeah, super interesting. I'll let you go,
So,
Mitch.
oh no, I'm just interested. You said you substituted it for a lot of different substances, let's say, including coffee. I'm just wondering what you're having right now, actually, as you're drinking on the podcast. Is that cacao or is that water?
That's cacao, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
This is our love blend. So we have 4 flavors. This one's the love blend, so it's got rose petal powder in it. So it's like like a Turkish delight.
So can you tell me what's the difference between what is the difference between cacao and coffee, or cacao and cocoa, or like I just want to get a little bit of an understanding for people who might not know, because when I think cacao, I think cocoa is what I think. I'm probably completely wrong, but just take us through it a little bit.
Yeah, beautiful. So cacao obviously is chocolate in its raw form, and in its raw form, it's actually not a confectionery item; it's a superfood. So in its raw form, it hasn't been ultra heat treated. It's not mixed with sugar or dairy. But in its raw form, it's actually one of the richest sources of antioxidants, highest sources of magnesium, iron, calcium, and zinc. But it also contains theobromine. Now, theobromine is the chemical that I say like helps produce happiness. So unlike coffee, which has caffeine, which produces cortisol, which is the fear chemical or your stress hormone, cacao has theobromine, which is like caffeine's cousin. And what it does is it actually opens up your heart, pumps oxygen around your body, but also releases oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. So all the chemicals that make us feel good, cacao actually helps release. And so it's actually one of the highest frequency foods as well. So, that's why, what's the highest frequency emotion is love. Chocolates is one of the highest frequency foods, and roses is actually one of the highest frequency scents. And that's why chocolate and roses is synonymous with love, because it actually produces the same biochemical reaction on the body as like receiving a hug or falling in love. And so it actually helps release, all those bliss and feel good chemicals as opposed to say coffee. And in terms of the actual cocoa has been ultra heat treated, it's been dry roasted, it's been damaged, mixed with sugar, and often dairy as well. And it doesn't have any of those chemical benefits, or they're at least very much reduced. And so, yeah, cacao is actually like one of nature's most nutrient dense superfoods when it's treated raw.
Yeah,
And
because cacao's kind of, I'm just going to keep going. Cacao's kind of, it's kind of bitter in a way when you have it without the sugar and the milk. Like I know that it's kind of like when you're a kid and you try dark chocolate for the first time, you're like, nah, I want to go straight back to the milk chocolate because your palate hasn't developed necessarily, or you're kind of more hooked on the sweet stuff. So it kind of does make more sense to me that it would be releasing, serotonin, oxytocin, those kinds of things. What do you mean when you say highest frequency food? What do you mean by that?
So basically everything vibrates at a certain frequency. All of our organs, our mind will vibrate at a certain frequency depending on the megahertz, things like that. And when we consume food also has a frequency as well. So if you grab some fruit that's fresh from the tree, like fresh fruit, it has high frequency. If you grab food that's actually dead and been dead for a while or highly processed, it's very low frequency. And cacao is actually grown 20 degrees north and south of the equator. So it actually gets maximum sunlight, so maximum prana from the sun, and that actually increases its frequency. And so that when you have this food, it actually does raise your frequency. It raises your vibration. So on a hertz level, it actually raises your frequency. So there's some foods that you can consume that will actually reduce your frequency, and then there's some foods that you can eat that will actually increase your frequency. And so cacao can give you energy by raising your frequency and raising your vibration, opening your heart, pumping blood around your body, and making you feel good.
And is that what we mean? So when we talk about human frequency, are we talking about human like energy levels in a kind of abstract sense?
Absolutely. So every organ can be measured. I'm not so sure of the exact measurements for which organ. I think it could be like 75 hertz, things like that. But each organ has a different frequency. And so if our body was to consume things that were just dead and had no life force, it would take more energy to process that food than we would get back from that food. And that's why sometimes even if we don't eat, we feel like we have more energy, because we actually are not reducing our frequency by having those foods. And so if we consume high frequency foods, cacao is one of them, chlorophyll is another super high frequency food. Any live foods, fresh fruits, produce, nuts, seeds, things that are really like live and fresh, those things will actually increase your frequency and literally.
So it's like, if it's
vibration. There's two look at it. Like people say like high vibes and they talk about a spiritual sense, but also there's the science behind it as well, which is actually like this guy actually has high energy. And if you were to measure that energy, then you'll be like, okay, cool, this guy is vibrating at a higher frequency and therefore has more energy.
Yeah.
And how do you measure that energy?
So there's different like tests that you can take and do, and like there's different ways that you can measure it. There's different, like there's Schumann resonance and a few different other machines and devices that you can use. There's like the Healy that they have in Germany as well, which can check your auric field. There's a few things that you can have, but yeah, for me, like the best way to kind of check that is basically just asking yourself, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel on a daily basis? Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling vital? Or are you feeling low energy? So there's a few different ways that you can check it. And me, myself personally, like when I have cacao, like I feel happier, I feel healthier, I feel more vital. If I was to eat something or drink something, for instance, like alcohol, it would actually, I would feel a bit more down, sometimes depressed, because alcohol can be known to be a depressant. A depressant will actually reduce your mood, lower your mood. And so, it's about having an understanding of which foods are doing what, the biochemical effect that it has on the body, but also on the mind. And that's one of the key components with cacao, is like our focus is like you can have the body, mind, and spirit. This is the only way we can interact into this physical plane, through the body, mind, and spirit, through the five senses. And so feeling into your body and feeling into the foods that you're eating, and if it's making you feel good or if it's taking away your energy. And cacao for me is one of the most potent medicines that you can have, that can actually, increase and elevate your mood, enhance cognitive function, and just literally just make you feel good without a come down or without a crash like you would get from, say, coffee or alcohol or, other substances.
And is it, I guess, curiously thinking about it as a substitute for coffee, and also in the context of these wild cacao parties, which, I'm looking forward to an invite at some point, as I know Mitch would be as well. It clearly has a sort of a stimulant effect. Is it in a way comparable to caffeine? And I guess to that end, my second question is, can you overdo cacao if you have too much?
Excellent question. So it's comparable to caffeine. Like I said, on a molecular level, pretty much caffeine and theobromine are practically identical, except one little component. That's the only thing that's different.
Okay.
Cacao actually has about 10% of the caffeine as coffee, so it still has a mild stimulant in it. But like I said, like I feel that coffee actually creates that stimulant and gives you that adrenaline. Adrenaline is also stimulated from your stress hormone. So it's stimulating your fight or flight frequency. So it's like, okay, cool, wow, I need to be alert, but it's actually using fear to make you alert. Whereas cacao actually makes you feel dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. So you actually get energy, but it's more of a love-based energy rather than a fear-based, And so can you overdo it? I mean, you probably could, as with anything. But if anyone has probably overdone it, it would probably be me.
Yes.
And I can safely say, like, it's totally fine. I mean, there's some studies, in like Native America, on some Native American villages who work with cacao, and they have sometimes 5 cups a day. And it's been scientifically shown to actually, reduce cardiovascular disease and other things like that. But, for me, we have 5 flavors at our cacao parties. We offer 1 flavor for each element. So we have earth, we have fire, which is chili, love, which has rose, vitality, has matcha and mint, which is great for the mind. So it's another stimulant. And then we have 100% pure ceremonial grade cacao, which is just 100% pure. And most people will actually have 1 of each of those. So they'll actually have 5 cups in one night. And having that amount, that dose, is actually what really does open your heart and elevate your mood. And the ancient Mayans, they used to use this as a bridge to connect to the spirit realm. And they would actually sit in ceremony with just water and 50 grams of cacao, like pure cacao, 50 grams. And they would use that as a way to connect with the divine, because it would actually open up their heart, relax their nervous system, because in magnesium, it really relaxes the nervous system and then releases all these feel-good chemicals. And so it does create a really beautiful holistic high. And you can actually receive messages, downloads, information. You can have inspiration. And so that's actually what we recommend. When people come to our parties, they'll have, 4 cups of our flavored cacao, and then we'll sit in ceremony at the end. And they'll have, by the end of it, about 50, 60 grams of cacao. And that whole experience over a span of 5 hours, it does really have a massive benefit on the body, mind, and soul.
There's actually one chemical that is in there that I do think is very relevant, especially considering what we talk about more regularly on the show, which is anandamide. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so anandamide, which is also referred to as Ananda, is actually the bliss chemical. So in Sanskrit, the word Ananda actually means bliss. And so
Yeah.
when this chemical is released, it actually, like in combination with all of those things just mentioned. So you got phenylethylamine and you've got tryptophan and you've got all these other different chemicals, but that particular chemical actually helps, like it induces the bliss state. And so cacao, when you consume it in this raw form, it actually can help make you relaxed, make you calm, and make you feel a bit more blissful, which is really beautiful. So for some people, cacao can be really stimulating, especially for those who don't have coffee or don't have stimulants. Cacao can be quite stimulating. For other people, it can actually be super relaxing. Like I know people who drink coffee and then will have like a ceremonial cacao at the end of the day before bed, and they're like, it helps me, relax my nervous system and drop into that bliss state. And so it really does depend on the composition of the individual and, how much stimulants and things like that they're having. But like you said, Mitch, cacao can be quite bitter as well, so it's not necessarily the nicest thing to drink sometimes, especially if you have it raw. And that's why they turn it from cacao into cocoa. They actually roast it and they take out that bitterness, and then they add sugar and milk, which if you're going to have that sugar just before bed, that's not going to be great either. And so the benefit of what we've done is we've actually mixed it with superfoods. So we use lucuma, carob, and a little bit of coconut nectar. So people can actually enjoy that during the day without having a sugar high. But also we have 100% pure ceremonial cacao, that's the cacao that we serve when we do ceremony. And that actual cacao is 100% pure. It's got the fat and the powder together, and it really helps relax the nervous system and release all those chemicals that you're talking about.
Is coconut nectar though sugar?
Coconut nectar is sugar, but it's an unrefined sugar. So basically it's evaporated coconut blossom nectar. So it's basically the sap from the flower that's then evaporated, so not processed, and then we've added it in. So it's not like a refined sugar. So it's actually still got nutrient value. And then we use lucuma, which is actually another superfood. So cacao is actually grown in the valley and it's considered food of the gods. And then lucuma is actually grown in the mountains, which is called gold of the Incas. And basically it's a really sweet fruit that has a very low sugar content. And so we put that in to help sweeten it. We put carob in as well, and then a little bit of coconut nectar to finish it off. So it's still got, you can still drink it without having to add anything else to sweeten it, but it's got very low sugar content overall in general. So that's the unfortunate thing. For me, most other brands will either get the cacao and they'll mix it 50-50 sugar, or it's sometimes 30-70% sugar. And for me, there's no health benefit of mixing nature's most nutrient-dense superfoods with, refined sugar.
And is it also that when you heat it as well, it kind of can strip some of the nutrients? So when people actually are having cacao in the form of chocolate, the fact that not only is it obviously mixed with dairy and refined sugars, it's, the heating process actually strips the nutrients out.
Absolutely. So when we heat anything, we're going to degrade the nutrient value of it. And this goes back to, when we're talking about frequency of food. When food is live, it's full of all of its vitality, all of its nutrients, everything is intact, the vitamins, everything's intact. Once you start to heat that, you're going to reduce that, and it's going to start to destroy some of those benefits. And so, when you heat treat it, even over we always cook our cacao. We always say not to heat it over 65 degrees. For a minute before they start to drink it. But when you start to ultra heat treat it, or you start to roast it and things like that at high temperatures over a long period of time, the higher the temperature, the longer the time, the less nutrient value it has. And so that's why our cacao is wild crafted, it's raw. And then when we invite people to drink it, we actually invite people to, you know, not heat it over 65 degrees. So it's really nice to have it at a lower temperature to increase the nutrient value and the absorption of those nutrients as well.
So talk to me a little bit about where, because we were chatting before we hit record, and you were talking about your wild adventures through Peru and how you sourced this. I want to hear, you know, a chapter and verse from the Jungle Book, if you could. Talk to me about what that looked like. How long were you over there for, and whereabouts does one find the best cacao in all of Peru?
Yeah, excellent question. So before I went over to Peru, you know, I had this business for maybe 3 years, and it was just something I had on the side while I was building my other business. And then, you know, when people started inviting us to parties and things like that, we started doing our parties, which was amazing. And then we got invited to go to Lost Paradise Festival. And Lost Paradise Festival, I don't know if you guys are aware, there's like tens of thousands of people, you know, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. And we took our Sacred Cacao bar there. We created a full bar. We did a massive DJ setup, and it was beautiful. But what we realized was a lot of people were letting go of the drugs, putting down the alcohol, and having a good time with our cacao. And then we realized, okay, cool, like we really do have something here. Like this is a medicine for the world. We can actually elevate people, have people have a good time. And so we made the decision then to take the business more seriously. And so, you know, for me, cacao is a very sacred plant medicine.
Yeah.
Hence the name sacred. And so we didn't want to kind of like commercialize it without understanding where our cacao comes from, who's growing it, and, you know, whose hands have touched it in the process. And for me, I'm always going back to source. And so I basically did a lot of research to find out where cacao originated from, et cetera, et cetera. And then basically I found out that it was actually originated in the heart of the Amazon basin. And so I did heaps of research, and I was like, cool, I found the tribe, I found the village that are growing it and cultivating it. And then I made the decision to fly over there. That being said, it was like one of the most dangerous parts of the jungle. And I required two translators to go in there, someone that spoke English to Spanish, and then someone that spoke Spanish to Ashaninka. And before going into that jungle where I was being warned, like I was speaking to locals trying to find a translator, and they're like, you're not going into that jungle, like you're not going to make it out alive. One lady saying to me, you should tell the police before you go in. Another lady saying you should definitely not tell the police. And so,
I was going to say, because surely anyone going deep into like Amazonian jungle, they're just thinking, this guy's looking for some harder stuff than cacao. Maybe another substance starting with C. I don't know.
yeah, well, especially me. Like I went by myself. I had a backpack with like 10 grand worth of equipment in it. Like I had a drone, I had a camera, all this stuff that I didn't even know how to use, mind you. But I'm like, I got to capture this and capture this story. And then, you know, my investor who invested in me, I was like, my heart was set. I'm like, this is the jungle, this is the place, this is where we're getting it from. He's like, man, like, you know, my investment is in you. So if anything happens to you, like, that's it. It's finished.
It's done.
So he's like, can you please go to a few different other places and just see, you know, if you can get it from a safer source? And I did that. And so I spent 3 weeks in Peru. I went from Lima all the way down to Cusco. I went to Quillabamba. I went to check out all these different, you know, cacao farms and other things. But what I saw there, I didn't like. And even I went to some of the places where some of my favorite brands get their cacao from, and I was like, I didn't really like what I saw. But what I did like actually pointed me into the jungle. And so, you know, I did 3 weeks of touring, and I went to all these different sites, and pretty much every time I went to a different site, it just said, you got to go into the jungle. You got to go into the jungle. And then the last time was like, all right, cool. Like I have to actually go in. And so where we get it from, it's not on a farm. It's not a plantation. It's a village. It's 300 families that grow it in the wild under the forest canopy. And the money that we give them, they use it to preserve their land, protect their culture, get their land titles back, and preserve their way of life. And where they are growing it and where they live is actually at the confluence. It's where the two rivers combine. And so it is actually one of the biggest hotspots for drug trafficking, narcotics trade, and everything. And so I thought, well, I'm very conscious about where we spend our money. I want to support and help as many people as possible. This is the best place I could give my money to do this. And so, yeah, basically it was a 16-hour bus ride, 7-hour canoe ride down the Amazon to get to the first spot. And then there we can actually like go down and meet the other families of the village as well. So there's a massive stretch of land that they work with. And the beautiful thing is they have a choice. They could be farming coca and making a lot more money, but damaging the environment. But they're making a stand. They're like, no, we want to preserve our land, preserve our culture, preserve this medicine. And now they're commercializing cacao as a means to preserve their land, protect their way of life. And the beautiful thing is they actually won an award. That same year that I went there, the same year I went into that jungle and came out, they actually won the Equatorial Award for Indigenous initiatives fighting climate change. Because the actual cacao that we get, it's not, like I said, a farm or plantation. It's not even sustainable. It's regenerative cacao. By planting the cacao and working with the cacao in the forest, it actually helps regenerate the forest. So it's actually like helping preserve the forest and helping the forest grow. And so that's a super important part for us, and we're very excited to be a part of the journey. Didn't know if I was going to make it in or out, but it wasn't a thing at the end of it. It was fine. I can't wait to go back and see the guys and see how they're doing. So yeah,
that's quite insane just to think of the most people, when they're bringing a product to market, don't have a supply chain that involves 16-hour bus ride, 7-hour canoe ride just to get the goods. It's quite a journey that the goods have to go on. But I'm curious, did any of the people that you were there with, I mean, do they carry weapons and stuff? I'm just trying to think of like the sort of stuff that you're likely to encounter in those parts of Peru.
yeah. Look, so some people do carry weapons, but that was just at the start and the beginning. Once I got into the jungle, it was like totally fine. And the deeper I went, there was probably like 5 or 6 stops. At the start, it was quite mainstream. There was like radios, kids playing soccer, soccer fields, and then it got deeper and deeper and deeper. Where, okay, cool, now we're right in the thick of this. Like people are really living in the jungle here,
Yeah.
But the thing is, for me, like a lot of people are like, oh, were you scared to go into the jungle? I'm like, I'm actually not afraid of the jungle. Like, I feel more at home in the jungle. In fact, when I got into the jungle, I'm like, why am I going to leave this place again? Like, I've got everything I need. I can live in the jungle. I can do this. Like, I don't need to leave. But then a voice said to me, it's like, well, you're leaving because they want to preserve this forest. And at that same time, in 2019, that's when the massive forest fires were happening in the Amazon. And so for me, it wasn't about like, fear of going into the jungle. The actual fear that I had was actually getting hijacked on the way there. Because even people I was taking the bus with, they're like, it says like if you get hijacked, there's all this kind of like protocol and procedure that you could actually get hijacked by being on the bus. Then there was a 2-hour car ride, and I was super worried about the car ride. But to tell you a funny story, right? Just to like add a bit of humor, seeing as though we talked about trance and DJing, right? So at every point of this journey, I was like, am I going to do this? Like, am I actually going to go in? There's no reception. There's no one around me. Like, am I going to go in? I'm like, well, I'll jump on the bus and I'll get to the place where I jump in the car, and then I'll get to the boat, and then we'll make that final decision. Bus ride was fine. I get to the car, and I'm like, all right, cool. I get in the car and I'm driving 2 hours, in the car to the actual dock. That was fine. And then I get out and I'm like, all right, Daniel, this is the last chance. This is your final chance to make the decision. Are you going to go in? And I'm like, whoa, this is hectic. Because at any point, if I'm on the boat and someone knows I'm there to make a commercial transaction to the value of, tens of thousands of US dollars, it's very easy to just, hijack basically. And it's like, well, am I going to do this? And you would not believe it, I'm in the middle of the jungle. I get out of the car, and then the actual boat driver, he gets out, and what is he wearing? He's wearing a t-shirt with the Tiesto symbol on it, Elements of Life. It was like one of my favorite DJs. And like, what's the chances of this guy wearing a Tiesto t-shirt in the middle of the jungle? I'm like, man, I'm gonna be fine.
He was waiting for you to come and fire up a cacao party, put on a little Adagio for strings, like just get it pumping.
Imagine that. And so, yeah, man, so as soon as I saw that sign, I just relaxed, jumped onto the boat and went in there. And so, the only thing I was concerned about was something happening on the way. But being in the jungle, being in the village, like the village was so beautiful. They were feeding me all fresh food caught from the jungle, cooked on the fire. Like, it was actually a very beautiful way of living. And I'm super grateful to have experienced that, to see how they grow the cacao, and to see that, to know that our money and our contributions are helping support that ecosystem and that way of life. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
How does it get, like, what's the process of it ending up in the bag in its form? Like, it obviously has to go through, so it comes from the jungle. Does it get manufactured there, or do you manufacture it kind of onshore?
So what happens is, there's, like I said, there's 300 families. And when we say families, it's not like your or my family with 5 people. It's like a family, there's like 30 people, like big families. So each
Yeah.
family has their own kind of like setup. So they'll go and they'll harvest the cacao. And even with the cacao, it's like, it's all wild crafted. So there's no fertilization. There's not even irrigation. They don't even water it. Like, it's completely wild. So they'll go and they'll harvest the cacao. They'll bring it back. And I don't know if you guys know much about cacao, but cacao is basically like a pod, like a football. And you break that open, and then there's all the cacao beans with flesh on it. And the flesh is actually super delicious. Like, it's really sweet, sometimes sour, but really delicious. So you can eat that. And then they put that into these boxes with banana leaves, and they ferment it. So that way it doesn't, it's not, they're not roasting it or ultra heat treating it. It goes into a process of fermentation. All of that flesh gets removed, and then you got the beans that then get dried out. Those beans then get crushed, turned into cacao nibs. It then gets ground down, turned into cacao paste, which has the powder and the fat together. Then the fat gets removed, and you have cacao butter, and then you have cacao powder. Now, the process that they do within the families is the fermentation to bean process, the drying of that process. And then they take those dry beans, put it into barrels, and they put it on canoes and send it back up to the first main town. And then at that main town, then they process it. So they have cacao beans, they have cacao nibs, they have cacao paste, they have cacao butter, and then they have cacao powder. And that's where and then we get it from the main town, and we bring it here. So that's how it works.
Wow. It's it is a process, but I mean, I'm just curious as well, how frequently can you get cacao to flower? So, is it a crop that, you can get quite a few, in a given year, or what's the frequency of that?
So the harvest is generally between July and August. Specifically for our variety, the variety that we use is the 100% Criollo heirloom cacao. So that's that's like the first original cacao strain. So the Criollo cacao strain is one of the originals. There's 2 other strains that do have higher yields and can produce a little bit longer. But because we want it to be super authentic and go straight to source, plus use it for spiritual purposes, we use the Criollo cacao strain, which I think makes up for about 6% of the cacao in the market. And so, yeah, the harvest is around July, August, and then that harvest has to last the whole year. But cacao is actually super abundant, and you can actually it produces a lot of pods, and you can get a massive harvest out of it. And so, yeah, they're producing quite a lot to sustain big numbers. And the good thing is that other communities are actually growing. So it's a part of a co-op. So other families are seeing what these guys are doing, and they're also, starting to plant cacao and regenerate their forests. So, unfortunately, I think there were some rumors that cacao may be extinct in like 30 years. And if we were going about it the current way, like the conventional way with plantations, monoculture, things like that, it probably would be. But with what these guys are doing and the efforts that they're making, we're looking at reversing that and increasing that 6% of Criollo cacao to, to something a bit more higher, because that is the most potent and the most beneficial cacao rather than the other 2 varieties.
It's interesting. I'm pretty sure I've read a study before on cacao. Like, normally when we think about chocolate, at least we think of putting on weight, but in the context of cacao, I believe it's linked to actually losing weight, or there's been some studies around that. Can you talk to that at all?
You know what, man? I've actually never heard anyone say it like that, and that's absolutely true. Like, because cacao is basically, it's a diuretic, so it increases your heart rate, increases blood flow, suppresses your appetite, and therefore, you can lose weight. But you're right. People eating normal chocolate, they will actually put on weight. That's actually a very good point. And so, if you were to have your cacao, basically I have my cacao on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. And what I actually have our chili blend, and that has like cayenne pepper and cinnamon. Those two things actually fire up your digestive system. But then when combining that with cacao, it does give you increased energy, and but does basically suppress your appetite. So you can basically, it's like pumping your heart, so it's like you're exercising as well. But also, it suppresses your appetite, so you can actually, like, you are known to actually lose weight. But yeah, I've never actually done it with both polarities there before, but that's absolutely true. Yeah, you can use it to lose weight. And me myself, like, I still eat chocolate, but the chocolate I do eat is, mostly dark, 70, 80%, 90% dark chocolate. But I've accustomed my palate to, enjoy that. And if I eat something that has got more sugar, I'm like, oh, so especially dairy, like I don't really consume dairy too much, but when you take those things out, like cacao, like raw chocolate is actually one of the best things that you can have. It's got so high in antioxidants. It's got 20 times more antioxidants than blueberries. It's actually one of the most antioxidant rich foods found in nature. It's also the richest source of magnesium and iron as well. So it is actually a superfood when consumed that way. So in terms of applying it to a healthy diet and using it to help you to lose weight, to gain energy, mental focus, it is definitely something that I would supplement for those benefits and purposes.
No, and I feel even you'd be a bit of a connoisseur with just understanding the flavor profile of cacao. So I imagine when you have chocolate these days, you're kind of like, I know this didn't come from a Criollo heirloom cacao plant. Like I'm not that interested in this lint crap or whatever. Do you get a little bit like that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like a a cacao snob or anything like that. I still appreciate the cacao, but unfortunately, cacao also has a bit of truth, pun intended. And the dark side of cacao is that most of the cacao that's in chocolate is actually grown in Africa. And in Africa, there's like over 1 million children in slave labor. And so for me, it's not just about the flavor profile and the nutrient benefits, the spiritual benefits. It's also like, well, what is the energy behind this cacao? Like, whose hands has it touched? Is it gone through the hands of, these villagers and farmers who are like really treating it with respect and with reverence, and it's like good for the community? Or is it, like child labor? And so that for me is something that is a bit more of a, tougher thing to swallow. And so I think that's why it's important to share these stories and to jump on podcasts like yourself so people can educate themselves and know. Because what really baffles me is that there's so much information. I think, Mitch, you said it yourself. There's like not much science behind cacao. It's not really brought to the mainstream. And it really baffles me because I'll go into a healthy coffee shop and I'll see like 8 different types of coffees. I'll see matcha latte, turmeric latte. I'll see a beetroot latte. And then I see this token hot chocolate with sugar. And I'm like, do you guys have cacao? And they're like, what's cacao? I'm like, man, what is going on here?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd go for cacao. I'm too stuck on my beetroot latte.
Oh dear.
The beetroot lattes, and it's like, it's cool. Like, it's beautiful to see all these things come out, like blue spirulina drinks and all this sort of stuff. But for me, it's like cacao is like, cacao comes from the Theobroma cacao tree. And like I said, it has theobromine in it. And the actual word theo and broma literally translates to food of the gods. So it's been considered food of the gods by, the Greeks, by the ancient Mayans, by so many civilizations around the world. It's been super revered. But just like most other sacred plants, plant medicines, it's been adulterated, it's been suppressed, and then it's been released in a very unhealthy way. Similar to tobacco, tobacco is actually a very sacred plant used by a lot of shamans in the Amazon, as a very sacred plant. Same with coca, which is cocaine. Like, the coca leaf is actually a very sacred plant medicine. And so a lot of these sacred plants, which are actually super beneficial for the body, mind, and spirit, have been adulterated and suppressed and then, shed around the world. And so, it's our mission to bring real chocolate back to the people, to cultivate more connection and allow people to enjoy the benefits, both on the body, mind, and spirit, through the power of cacao. And unfortunately, there's not much information around it. So, that's why we're here spreading this message and also like spreading good cacao. And that's the beauty about what we've done. We've gone direct to source. We found it, and we haven't mixed it with anything toxic, and we're allowing people to enjoy it, whether you want something sweet or whether you want something full power. We have something for people to enjoy.
Food of the gods, not fit for atheists.
Sorry?
Food of the gods,
No.
not fit for atheists.
Well, it's food of the gods, but you can still have it if whatever you choose to believe. So,
No,
maybe
I'm
that might help
kidding.
you connect to your own spirit, to your own beliefs. But yeah, and
Well,
that's what we do.
if I can get away from my asparagus chai, I'll give it a shot.
Oh, wait,
Um,
just which is it, Mitch? Is it asparagus chai or beetroot latte? Because I've seen you
I actually
oscillate between
I
the two.
mixed them
You
together.
do. It's disgusting. And
Um,
I keep trying to get you on the turmeric macchiato train, and you're just not
I
interested.
have to say, when you do find a good raw cacao dessert or drink, it does have a whole different flavor profile that must translate. Like when I think about it, I mean that study I was referring to was regarding mitochondrial biogenesis, which is a different mechanism. But when I'm talking about just pure flavor profile, you can usually tell when something's kind of good for you on an innate level when you have it. Like sometimes if you get a
Like,
like
but you know that Cocoa Pops are banned for you, but
yeah,
Cacao Pops
yeah.
could be good for you.
Yeah, well, you
Yeah,
just
that's a
know
new
when you
product.
eat
There
it.
you go.
There we go.
When
Cacao Pops.
but even the way you feel after that, if you have a shake from Betty's Burgers, which you do have on occasion, you know how you feel after that. It's not,
Mm.
you know what I mean? It's your body's rejecting a lot of the chemicals that are in that. So
Yeah,
it
and
does
it's
make
not
sense.
good for weight loss, I found. Like it's, you know what I mean?
No, that one isn't. It's good for type 2 diabetes, but the rest of it.
But we digress. I'm just curious. Before we wrap up, I want to know about, I guess, your observations as someone who's, bringing cacao to the people and in the industry. Is cacao consumption in its raw, untouched form that you're bringing it in, are we seeing a rise in that? Are more and more people, like, what does the future of cacao look like? Are we going to see it in cafes? Are you hoping?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, Mitch, you can really tell the difference when you eat something in cacao. You can feel the difference whether this is good for you or bad for you. The good thing about our cacao, like I said, it grows in the jungle, so it actually takes flavor profiles from the neighboring forest. So it'll actually have sweet undertones of whatever fruit trees and things are around. And so that's like the best way that you can tell that your cacao is grown in the forest, is it has other flavor tones to it as opposed to just monoculture cropped cacao. But then to answer your question, Andrew, do I see cacao pretty much making a comeback? Absolutely. Cacao is making a complete resurgence as a superfood for the body. So people having it in their shakes, in their smoothies, having it primarily for the health benefits, for magnesium consumption and theobromine and whatnot, but also in cafes as well. So cafes are starting to introduce it and use it. And so we're super excited by that. Like a lot of people are contacting us to become stockists. Here I am, I'm in Switzerland. I'm in the land of chocolate right now. We've been invited over here to bring our cacao to them. And
Processed chocolate.
Sorry?
You're in the land of
Yeah,
processed.
the land of processed chocolate. And it's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
beautiful to bring our cacao to this land of processed chocolate and have it be like whenever we do a cacao ceremony. We did one the other day for 100 people, and in Australia when we ask people, hey, have you done a cacao ceremony, maybe like 20% put their hands up. In this country we asked 100 people who's done a cacao ceremony, all their hands went up. I'm like, all right, cool, we're with some experienced people over here. When they got to taste our cacao and again experience it, to actually feel the difference, to taste the difference, to feel the difference, and have that bodily reaction where they're like, whoa, I don't feel guilty about having this. I actually feel better having this. Then they kind of like want to have more. And I think that's the thing. Like I said before, going into a coffee shop, there isn't that option. There's just the token hot chocolate, which is 70% sugar and cocoa. So there's no real benefit of having it. Yeah, we're here to people actually are starting to want it. They're starting to ask for it. And we're very grateful to be a part of that journey and to be able to provide it for them, but also to know that our supply is coming from a source where it's protecting where the cacao first originated and we're protecting those heirloom varieties. So I do see like the future of cacao. I think people, we have 100, sometimes 150, 200 people coming to our parties, and they're choosing to come and have cacao over alcohol, so, and even, popular, things like that. So people are becoming more conscious, more aware. And we're just grateful to be a part of that journey and give people that option to have a healthier cacao drink, whether you're using it to replace coffee or to replace a hot chocolate or alcohol or chocolate in itself. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to what the future of cacao has and brings, and yeah, we're excited about bringing it to the world.
Well, that's awesome, and we are looking forward to not only having a taste of that raw cacao, but I think also combining that with a little bit of a bit of trance music, popping into one of these cacao parties, getting a little bit loose and a little bit lit on the cacao train. That sounds right up our alley.
Come on down. The last party we did in Melbourne was actually an anthems party. So I actually got to play like 3 hours of all the classic trance. And so, it's really funny because I never thought that I could get people as a DJ, we are the controllers of energy. It's like we can elevate people with one song, or we can completely empty the floor with another song. But to see people actually dance high energy, in high intensity without substances, it's just beautiful.
And you're not going to see somebody like, I don't know, curled up in a corner and be like, oh, he's not in a good way, had too much cacao. Like it's something, it's something you can, it's something it seems like you can tolerate. People can just tolerate a lot, but it also sounds like the sort of drink that in a way, because of how it tastes, or it just, from what you've described, it sounds like something that you tend to just gravitate towards drinking in moderation, unlike the way sometimes people might be drinking alcohol at those sort of high energy events.
Well, see, that's the thing, man. Like, when I looked at it, I remember my last gig I did it was like Stereosonic. It was like the first 2-day event, and I thought people would go easy the first day, hard the second day. No, everyone went hard the first day, harder the second day, and everyone was blitzed by the second day of Stereo. And I remember I finished my set, I opened up the trance arena, I was sitting in the bleachers watching everybody, and everyone was really tanked. Like, they were drunk, they were punching on, there was like overdoses. I was seeing a lot of toxicity. And it made me realize, I had a thought, like, what is all this for? Like, why are we doing this? Why do we come to these events? And I realized, like, a lot of people come to, obviously to have a good experience, to have fun, but to also to connect. But sometimes, we have a lot of barriers and walls that, prevent us from connecting. And those substances, alcohol, drugs, it helps remove those barriers, remove those walls, but it makes us like super sloppy because it reduces our inhibitions. When we reduce our inhibitions, we don't have the ability to make decisions, so we have more alcohol, more substances, we do silly things. The beautiful thing about cacao, it doesn't reduce your inhibitions. Like I said, it raises your vibration, raises your frequency, raises your awareness. So when you have a bunch of people together in a room having cacao, they'll initially come in, they'll have their walls and their barriers and whatever. But as soon as you have cacao, everyone's raising above the walls and they can connect at a higher level. And, the common theme, like, when I get off the decks and finish DJing and go through the crowd, like a lot of people are like, man, I had the best time. I had the best conversations and I feel so good. And, it's a high that you don't have to come down from. And that's the thing, like, you don't just have to have the cacao by itself. Like, cacao is a vasodilator. So whatever you put with it, your body's going to receive more of it. So if you put medicinal mushrooms, if you put, other things that can help enhance your benefits, then you can also mix it with that. And it's just good to see people choosing a natural holistic high as opposed to, alcohol and substances. And, we've been invited to go back to Lost Paradise this year. We did Rainbow Serpent the last time, and a lot of people would come in intoxicated, put down their substances, party with us for 5 hours or 6 hours straight, and then they would say, man, that was actually the best night of the festival because I feel good, I can remember it, I met some amazing people, and that's it. They got the connection that they wanted, they got the experience that they wanted, and they didn't have to sacrifice their body or their mind or, basically when I feel like we drink or have other substances, I basically feel like we're borrowing happiness from tomorrow. But when we have cacao, we actually like create happiness and we create more of it. And there's and
you're more in the moment. There's, it's no side effects. You're clear-minded. It's no, it's definitely something. I think I speak for both Mitch and I. Will definitely be getting around to a bit of cacao and putting on some tunes. It sounds wicked.
Well, yes, sling us your address and I'll send you guys some cacao. And yeah, if you guys are ever in town, you're in Melbourne, like come check out one of our cacao parties. We do it every full moon. So every full moon we do a cacao party for like hundreds of people. Then every new moon we do a ceremony for like 20 people, and we go deeper in the journey. It's like an introspective journey, eyes closed, sound healing, and a guided meditation. So there's really something for everybody. So yeah, we'd love to take you on that journey, and have you guys experience it, and yeah, get high.
We're going to do that, Mitch, and then we're going to report back to our AltMed audience and give a little bit of a debrief with the crew. But
yeah, I'll do that. I'll check it out. Absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent.
Come check it out. Yeah,
thanks so much, Dan. It's like this deep dive's been very just full of insight and knowledge. It's been quite enlightening, actually, just to learn so much about this superfood, and how it can really can help people, and to connect with those around them, and maybe help people actually, if you're listening to this and you're having too much coffee on the weekdays, too much alcohol on the weekends, think about substituting to, go for something a little bit more holistic and natural. It might work for you, but yeah, Dan, really appreciate your time, and we're super pumped for your venture and what you're doing. It sounds great.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for having me. Much appreciated.
All right. And next time we see you, we'll see you at the cacao party.
Yeah, don't order above and beyond with the cacao.
Yeah, totally. I'll be there, mate, front and center. All right.
No, that sounds good.
All right. Well, till next time, take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Cheers. Bye. Hey guys, Andrew Dowling here, and Mitch Kurtz. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the AltMed podcast.
Make sure to hit like and subscribe, because we've got heaps more content coming out, and it's really fun and great, and we love it all.
Also very good.